A Year of Bloodied Thorns by Matthew Patrick. Chapter 1. A Viewing to Remember. My name is Regina Vale, and I am blessed with magic. There, nice and succinct as starting lines go. Might as well be my catchphrase. The exact wording, much like the meaning, has varied over the years. No one is the same person they were even a few years ago. Not if they are living their life right. Desires change, friends, lovers, and even family drift apart. A person must grow, which means making hard choices. But I'm not scribbling down tidbits from my past just to philosophize, not even to get some use out of the thesaurus Mom gave me as a joke one birthday, which leads to the problem gnawing at my mind. The same question that plagues any self-indulgent fool sitting down to write their own story. Where should a story begin? At the beginning, obviously. The younger me would be right there beside such supposed savants, chuckling her foolish life away. I got better, or so certain friends claim. Experience chipped away the rough stone of youth to reveal the magnificent sculpture of wisdom beneath. Some days I almost believe them. There's a better, or at least a more pretentious question. How do you know where the beginning of your own story actually is? Don't worry, not going to recount every portent that plagued my childhood. Perhaps I should have started with a scared child recounting nightmares. How the faces of dead or dying celebrities on the news had haunted her dreams days earlier. Such an active imagination tiny Regina Vale possessed. That was the usual line. That timid girl would blame herself for her father dying. Even then, I had to make up so many things about me. Mother said that I could not have stopped what happened. That it was just a terrible accident. The world was a big place, and such things happened all the time. She was right, of course. That sad little girl decided that dreams were mere dreams, and that silly journal, so often tucked under a pillow or beneath the bed, meant to decipher the wild visions, a fantasy best forgotten. But my thoughts have meandered enough. Best to defy my artistic nature and attempt to keep things simple. Most likely I shall fail spectacularly, but the struggle should prove mildly entertaining. Thus, let us go back to beginnings. Specifically, when did I first reach into my bitter mind and start plucking the strings of magic again? Easy. That would be the third night where not a soul bought any of my paintings. Petty, right? I was a young adult and fancied myself the next great artist. And like all aspiring artists, I imagined people hanging my early embarrassments in their home. I pictured elites proudly telling guests at fancy parties how they were fans of my work before it was fashionable, long before museums and dealers started fighting over whatever scraps of my obvious genius they could find, that their meager budgets could afford. Those were the vainglorious hopes dancing about my mind that night, a night spent mostly alone, fiddling with my red bespoke jacket. The occasional redesign of a coat was a personal ritual, an act often invoked to banish anxiety. And yes, I had decided to take scissors and a needle to the thing when I got home. As you no doubt guessed, few people graced the tiny gallery that night. Most couples on their way to nearby restaurants, or corporate buyers looking for a write-off to slash on the walls of some office. The figures depicted in my paintings had more joy in them. Said gallery was a converted office once used to peddle cheap insurance, once converted to cater to those with a sliver of disposable income. Not the kind of place that would be selling my works for millions. Still felt magnificent to see my work hanging on those walls. Making a sale would have been more magnificent. A kind word or genuine appreciation for technique was always wonderful, but money was more versatile. Goods and services that made life interesting required that stuff. Landlords, for example, were quite insistent on you paying them for the luxury of keeping a roof over your head, and sandwich shops rarely handed their delicacies out for free. Moreover, any of those people that stumbled through the gallery would be blessed to have one of my paintings brighten their dreary little homes. Yes, I thought like that back then. A person should be like proper wine and get better with age. But let's not get lost in such thoughts or hint at my potential drinking problem. Having taken the whole day off from the uninspiring business that underpaid me, I sat around the cheap gallery clinging to hopes of being discovered. And so those passing by outside would not see a completely empty showing. The gallery owner was nice and certainly tried to move pieces. Yet, near the end of the day, they walked over and gave me the bad news. The fancy frames were provided by the gallery. The owner would be keeping those and would send the canvases back to my tiny apartment via mail. No doubt they could write all of that off as a business expense, but it saved me from dragging boxes to the rail. My generous offer to let them keep my work as long as they liked it was declined. Looking back, the place was not a storage depot. If my art did not bring in revenue, it was time to give another artist their shot. A sensible position, and many of those history remembers were never appreciated in their lifetimes. Still hurts like hell. Much like decent paints and canvases had been hurting my wallet. There was that delightful saying about having to spend money to make it. Clearly, I had not mastered the latter part. I finally asked if I might pack a few smaller works to help pass the final hour. The owner, doing a decent job at hiding any pity, conceded. While packing away my hopes and dreams, I glanced out the large glass windows lining the front of the gallery. A monster stared back. An impressive feat, given the lack of eyes. Sockets had never formed on that smooth and startlingly chalk-white face. A slit down the center passed for a nose and ended above a gnarled maw. Teeth too long and sharp to be human rested in that mouth. The creature's wings of crystal, reminiscent of broken snowflakes, did not so much as flutter. Those immaculate feet did not touch the ground. The naked and mostly featureless form hovered beyond the glass. Hovered and stared. I harbored no doubts the creature could smash through the glass with ease. None of the pedestrians passing by the hovering nightmare seemed particularly concerned. Its limbs, jarring wings included, twitched just enough to let them pass unheeded. That pale head, however, never moved. Even without eyes, it was clear that the face was directed straight towards me. Had I splurged on a big dinner, I would have had to change my pants. Yes, you heard me. Well, you read what I wrote. When an abomination against both nature and proper magic pops into view, primal drives claw to the surface. Muscles tense, soldiers and cops meant to deal with far less outwardly disturbing creatures trained for good reason. Thankfully, I simply froze. Little could have prepared me for that horrid angel glaring into my soul. My skin prickled at the chill air. It took a few seconds for my rattled brain to register that thumping in my ears was my own heartbeat. "Here you go," Lynn Davis, one of the art gallery assistants, said as she walked up with a cardboard tube used to store rolled paintings. My eyes finally tore themselves from the eyeless thing's gaze. When I looked back, the creature was gone. "Regina, are you okay?" Lynn smiled, that beautiful smile that came so naturally. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Yeah, she actually said that." It was enough to hear my name on those gorgeous lips. "Long day, thank you," was all I managed. I forced a smile until she left. Helped that she was cute. There remained days, even after all of this time, where I would trade being blessed with magic for a chance to just walk down the beach with Lynn Davis. Such simple dreams easily slip through one's grasp, much like how the floating horror beyond the glass slipped from my worries. Clearly, I was tired. I slid my unsold paintings inside of the satchel I usually carried. Another gift from Mother. The soft leather bag was quite useful. More expensive than I usually went for, but it was a gift. I would repay her back tenfold. That is what I, and presumably any decent kid, told themselves. My concept of normalcy refreshed, I left for the rail station. The community college I had scraped together enough cash to attend was on break, and it was too late to show up at work just to help close. Thus, I decided to return home and paint. Whatever I brought to life on canvas might ease my stressed mind, even if it failed to produce funds later. Sometimes, art was just about keeping yourself sane. During the brief journey, however, I began to doubt my hands were up to the task of creating beauty. The dozen or so people sharing the railway car chattered or played on their phones. All seemed happy enough to spark my envy. A long day of not beating back crowds of admirers had left me mentally exhausted. There would be no productive strokes of brush or pencil once I returned to the flat I shared with several other young fools. My tired body would slip through the shared living space to crash on my comfy bed. I would read or watch a video before sleep took hold. Maybe chat with Mom if she deigned to answer her phone. We did not talk as much as we should have in those days. One of my decisions I regret. But sticking to my origin story, I was tired. If I managed to grab enough precious slumber, I would earn the right to rise again in the morning, to start the rut that was my existence all over. Exciting stuff, you're probably thinking. Thankfully, I took a wrong turn after departing the station. At least, that is what my pathetic brain thought at the time. A street strewn with other people going about their business gave way to an empty one. Obviously, I didn't stray from the usual path of well-lit streets. Those streets twisted without my conscious mind realizing. How was I supposed to tell the difference? I had not awakened yet. Awakened. Creative word for plunging headfirst into the magical realms instead of skimming the surface. Skimming was what your classic psychics and whatnot did, assuming that they were the tiniest bit legit. The ones advertising their supposed powers usually weren't. Yet, they still managed to sell merchandise. Such is life, and my thoughts are wandering again. If you ever find yourself touched by real magic, be smart. Keep the knowledge to yourself until those with as much sense as skill find you, and pray, if you fancy such things, that the seekers of inner light are the ones that come knocking. Far worse stalks the unseen paths of this world, and such horror seeks more than to give you a recruiting pitch and collect dues. But back to my early days. A freezing gust of wind nearly toppled me over and tore my jacket. My satchel flew open, and a cardboard tube slipped out. I stopped to look around and straighten my ruffled hair before I picked up the tube. As I straightened my clothes and returned the tube to the satchel, I soon discovered an envelope waiting in the bag. I looked around again, seeking to glimpse any strangers that had brushed past. An eerily empty street and dying wind were my only companions. Oh, for the days when muggers were my biggest concern when alone on a street at night. Would have settled for being the victim of one of those ridiculous prank shows. Speaking of garbage, there was a trash can close by. Could have tossed the letter in and kept walking, but curiosity killed the cat and all that. I slowly opened the envelope to find a fancy invitation to a coffee shop near my apartment. The overpriced one that I had never so much as bought scones at. The lettering was typed in gold on black paper. The most peculiar thing, however, was that no date or time was listed. Not that it mattered. I was too tired for mysteries. I walked the rest of the way home, slipped through the flat, and went straight to sleep. What, expecting me to just jump at such nonsense? Had you anticipated that wretched angel swooping down to rip my throat out? Sorry, but not every story begins with some grand battle sequence or attempted murder. Don't worry, we will get to all of that in due time. And I was tired, so very tired. Whatever dreams haunted my mind quickly faded the next morning. Remember that dream journal when I was younger? The best I could find was a sketchbook, which I slipped the invitation within. Then I began sketching my angelic observer, crafting an image of what could not be. I quickly fell back on an old excuse. The twisted angel had obviously been conjured by my frustrated mind. I was too old to be afraid of monsters hiding under the bed or in a closet. I was several steps out of the closet by that point of my life. I prided myself on outgrowing such nonsense, on stepping into the real world to study art and literature, because those degrees would swell my bank accounts. Over the next few days, I would find myself touching up the sketch. While I never once saw the creepy visitor peer through my window, I often felt a presence nearby. You know that feeling when you think that you are being watched? Like that, but deeper and coupled with this shiver as the body agreed with the soul. Still, I gradually began to ignore the sensation. Such fears were for children, remember? I often found myself staring at the invitation, stirring up the courage to go in search of answers. Eventually, a combination of stubbornness, natural curiosity, and sheer boredom won. I had not painted in all of that time. Sketching, while fun in its own way, was not the same. It was as if glimpsing that winged monstrosity had diminished a part of myself, the better part from which the passion that made life worth living flowed. By the third day after that fateful night, I had finally endured enough. I would simply not continue on, trapped halfway between the joys of creating and the sweet oblivion of a sound night of sleep. I would rouse the passionate part of my soul again. At the very least, I needed caffeine.